Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio. It's been a while since I've talked about the case of Richard Gaikowski as a suspect in the Zodiac killer mystery. I did some of this last year, where we kind of just went through the step-by-step things associated with Gaikowski, but what we really didn't get to do was talk a lot about the person who brought Gaikowski's name to the national main stage, the informant known as Goldcatcher. The motivation for this upload right now is just sort of that Gaikowski is someone who received some of the absolute largest amounts of attention on the internet, and it's like a lot of people are even viewing him as the prime suspect. Maybe you can think of a few names, and, really just, it's really more than one person, it's just all across the internet. Everybody's really trying to nail Richard Gaikowski as the Zodiac killer, and the first time I ever heard about him was from someone saying that they have confirmed and identified that Gaikowski was the Zodiac killer. They really genuinely believe this. But who is Goldcatcher, this person that turned over Gaikowski's name, or at least brought it to the attention of investigators? Well, going through some of these things, it's like Goldcatcher was also known as Blaine, or Purple Blaine, or Zacatarius. Goldcatcher was somebody who was a former colleague of Richard Gaikowski at the Good Times, and it's like, the Good Times meaning the newspaper that Gaikowski was the editor of. So they were former co-workers together, and to be very honest, I don't really doubt. If I had been in Goldcatcher's position, I would feel very suspicious of Gaikowski. I mean, if all of the circumstantial things that people have put forward about him are somewhat true, yeah, okay, it's somewhat reasonable to suspect him, but I really think that Goldcatcher is someone who falls into some very questionable territory, because Goldcatcher is someone who had trouble with employment. He was had trouble with, homelessness for a large portion of the 60s and 70s. I believe he was living in a van, a very unstable person. And is there a possibility that Goldcatcher was really trying to force this theory on people because he wanted some fame, notoriety, fortune, be able to sell this story to newspapers and media outlets? I'd say that it's possible. In fact, I'm going to genuinely speculate that I have that very strong feeling and suspicion. So we don't necessarily know everything about Goldcatcher's motivation. I can't say definitively 100%, but I have the strong feeling that some things are going on with that. Just, the unstable nature, a former colleague of Gaikowski's. Gaikowski would have been suspicious, but let's also point out something very strong. One of the first things that people say about Gaikowski is he matches the Zodiac sketch perfectly. And the short answer to that is no, he doesn't. He does not have the widow's peak, and also Gaikowski's face is much wider than the Zodiac sketch. But that's just a sketch. The widow's peak thing, though, that really stood out to me as of late. Louis Myers, someone else who I've talked about a lot on this channel, also doesn't really seem to have that widow's peak thing in the center of the forehead. So, that just is what it is. That's not, 100% certainty of anything, but at the same time, there it is. So, when we're exploring this case, the way that I understand it is, Goldcatcher approached many people with this possibility that Richard Gaikowski was the Zodiac. And he even got in touch with two detectives, and they were the ones who visited Gaikowski, and Gaikowski produced the passport to them and was just like, hey, no, I'm not the Zodiac killer. Look, I was out of the country at the time. Because on the original uploads, I'm going to confess to you that I made the statement, somebody witnessed Gaikowski's passport and saw that he was out of the country in Ireland. And I believe he actually visited Ireland and Northern Ireland, crossing the line into the UK. So, he was in both of those because he was covering, some journalistic work at the time, because Gaikowski was a journalist before he went into the movie theater business. So, we have that. That's just sort of the end all. That was the end of the investigations into him. And, I wouldn't say that it was the easiest thing to find on the internet. 6 years ago, when I first heard about Richard Gaikowski and began exploring that, it wasn't until 2018, this year, that I would really find something like that so widely shared and widely discussed that I want to say actually that Ken Narlow even was someone who witnessed Gaikowski's passport and saw that he had been out of the country for the times of one of the murders. Now, the reason why I said I'm going to confess to you something is I didn't quite comprehend the story, even though I was saying, stuff that I had been reading online, that someone had witnessed his passport. Well, it's like, the way I kind of just explained it, it was actually detectives that, asked him about his whereabouts, and he provided the passport to them, and they were like, there's no possible way it could be this guy. Tom Voigt, the legendary Tom Voigt now, is someone who greatly challenges that, who just simply does not believe it, and there's actually a bit of a debate going on. It's like Tom Voigt is just very, very certain that there is no definitive evidence that Gaikowski was out of the country, at the time of the murders. I mean, he doesn't really accept anything associated with that, and it's not the most definitive evidence. We have something like, he published an article from Ireland in January 31st, 1968, which would have placed him out of the country around that time. But one of the things, though, that I can say about this is Goldcatcher is unstable. Gaikowski was, there's a record of Gaikowski's meeting with multiple people who have claimed that they have seen this passport and that he was out of the country. We have a friend who has a letter saying that Gaikowski was on the East Coast at the time of one of the murders. Not to mention, he doesn't match the sketch completely. He doesn't have the widow's peak, and his face is much wider. I will just say, though, is it possible at all that Goldcatcher really exaggerated certain things to try and build up the suspicion around Gaikowski for profit? I'm really leaning that way, and I'd say there's a lot of kind of evidence and that's pushing people away from anything associated with Gaikowski. Because the internet was really, really zoning in on him as just like the absolute prime suspect, and I never really saw that. I never really saw the connection. I never really felt that it was fitting like a glove, or that, if the shoe fits, wear it. I never had that feeling. It's almost just like there has been this giant wrench, And, if Gaikowski's not the Zodiac killer, talk about some rotten fucking luck. I mean, G-Y-K-E, Gaik, appears in the cipher, and, and it's like, his name just happens to begin with G-A-I-K, and he went by the nickname Gaik, spelled G-A-I-K. Yeah, talk about some rotten luck. But, I would say, though, much like Gaikowski's friend said in a documentary once, if there was any DNA evidence or fingerprints or anything, I would admit, yes, 100%. I would admit that, my suspicion is not true. But until then, I say that Goldcatcher is someone who is unstable, and I don't really believe the theory. Short upload, but that's all for me now. Until next time.